Hello out there, got a real interesting one for you today, and it's this thing right here. This is a Hendey metal planer. You've all heard of the wood planer. This is a metal planer. From the real early days of machining, we had the lathe, of course, and then the planer was more or less arguably the second machine tool that was really out there, and then shapers and milling machines, rotary cutters came much later. This uses a single point cutting tool like a lathe, and your work goes back and forth on the table and the whole head traverses using this little thing right here, and you can change the direction of it going across, and then you can tilt the whole head to do angle cuts. So on much bigger versions of this thing, that's how like lathe beds are made with the ways and stuff. So Matt, if you're watching, thank you for the opportunity to be able to purchase this thing. Awful excited to start experimenting with it. So I needed to build the table, which I'll show you. I needed to build the counter shaft. The story of this was it came from a Southern Ontario model maker, and then a young fellow bought it and hung on to it for a while, didn't end up getting it to go, and reached out to me with the opportunity to pursue it a little bit. So it's in miraculously good shape. Nothing was seized, everything's free, and really nice and smooth. This thing hasn't been worn out like a lot of larger planers have been. There's a single shaft that comes out the side, and there are two idlers. It takes a teeny tiny little 3/4 inch wide belt, flat belt. And then there's this thing which shifts back and forth, and you can manually override it and shift it by hand if you want. And the stroke is set by stops on the sides of the bed. There is a power feed, power traverse, and there's a little pawl here that you can flip one way or the other to pull or push the head. And that thing is controlled. You can change the stroke with this little knurled wheel, move it up and down, and that will determine the length of travel. And the whole thing works with a little clutch, a slip clutch. So if the thing ever runs to the end and no one's paying attention, it's not going to bust anything. It'll just slip that little clutch there, this little friction plate. So Hendey Machine Company, Torrington, Connecticut. The early Hendey Machine Company, they were marked Walcottville. I believe it's what they called the center town of Torrington, Connecticut. So this therefore dates about after 1880 or something. Oh, the mascot wants to be seen. So post 1880, there are a few of these machines around, not all that many, a couple that you can see on forums online and stuff. There's the exact same model set up at Armington and Sims Machine Shop, Greenfield Village, Henry Ford's Village. I don't know if it runs or not, but there's the same style here. So this thing is a 2-foot bed. I believe that's how it's classified. 2 foot long and 8-inch across face. And there's one T-slot down the whole thing, and then a bunch of holes for the screw pins that were used back in the days of planing. So lots to learn, lots to know in this. And it was distributed by Manning, Maxwell, and Moore Railway and Machinist Tools and Supplies, Liberty Street, New York. Beautiful little brass tag on it there. It was came from a model maker, like I said. There are little mounts and threaded holes and stuff on the back, so presumably it had a motor maybe hung off the back of it, like Keith Rucker's great big planer that he restored and put a counter shaft directly above it. The whole point of me getting this thing here and going is to return it to flat belt line shaft days. So I have a few pulleys. We'll put a counter shaft together. I'll show you building the table and then fire it up. So hope you enjoy. Well, what's this mess? What's going on here? What's going on here is a big project I'm looking forward to. First of all, it's a pretty simple table build. Cast iron legs here, cast iron legs here. These are real antique legs, beautifully ornate castings. And I must say, I don't tend to support the leg market because the unfortunate victim of the leg market is the entire machine, of course. And these legs came off of a pretty early metal lathe, probably 1880s. However, the lathe had a very short bed, and it was a blind spindle, so you couldn't feed stock through it. So that really limited its applications. Most importantly, the whole top had already been knocked off of it. So all that was left was the legs and the bed. What are you going to do? I needed the legs. So I have them and a couple nice old 2x12s. So they're about 40 inches long. And the item which is of most importance here is what's going on top of this table. And that's a benchtop Hendey made metal planer. Extremely excited about this opportunity. I never thought in this tiny little shop of mine I could ever fit a planer in it, or even find a planer, let alone that. So extremely excited. First of all, need something to put it on, so let's get this table built. I got these legs in pretty well original shape. They were all crusty, rough and stuff, so I used a steel brush to get the bigger chips off, and then wire wheeled it and spray bombed her. So I have to get these mocked up in a way, because the place that it's going right here is quite confined, and this place is already tight as it is. I need the legs to be inside of the base of where the planer will mount. The planer is between mounting holes 3 feet exactly. So these legs will be slightly inset, probably right about here. So it'll be a very stable base for this substantial machine. So let's get to it. Let me introduce you to the magical bolt box. This thing is some sort of old military surplus box. I don't know. I got the whole thing at a garage sale years ago for $5, and it came with a beautiful amount of old blackened hardware from the square nut days. So, you know, old enough. We have nuts in that trough, washers in this little sub box, and then a whole mix of hex and carriage bolts. So this is the size that I needed, and the blessed box provided me with 3. However, I need 6, 3 for each side, and it had no more to give up. So what will we do? Well, over here in this drawer, this is the other carriage bolt drawer, and guess what? We have a whole bunch of the same diameter but much longer. So we'll cut them down, rethread them, no big deal. So using the good old thread gauge, I can tell that perfectly 16 threads per inch. Oh, look at these things, by the way. These are old drawer pulls with little dogs' faces. Aren't those cute? I think I cleaned this one off. Asking to be made a project out of. Anyway, 16 threads per inch. So we can go over to the chart. And look at the coarse standard thread. Where's 16? It's 3/8. So now I can go into the drawer and get the correct die. Well, the tap and die drawer has generously granted us a 3/8 by 16 Galt Canadian made die in lovely shape, and a nice adjustable handle made in Butterfield in Quebec, Rock Island, Quebec. So let's put her to use. Try this number 1. I'll use the bottom square of the carriage bolt on the inside of the jaws, and that should help us from having it twist around, as things tend to do when you're threading. This is a Parker vise, and it has this nice little feature of a pin thing, detent if you will, and here it prevents this from going wham wham back and forth, and you can actually adjust it to wherever you want and it'll stay. Just get the rough edge off, maybe help the die start a little bit. Oh, my die is slipping. It's no good. Well, did a changeroo on the holderoo with this old really heavy thing that has 3 nice set screws that index all 3 divots in the die. So if this fails, I don't know what to say. Now I'm making cut threads, obviously, with a die, and the original ones were roll formed threads, which numerically I guess are stronger because the rolling is basically work hardening the surface, that kind of thing. So they tend to be stronger than cut threads, but hey, for building a table, I think maybe that's getting a little bit too technical. So got the base ready, legs are mounted, center bolt hole on the crack exactly between the two 12-inch boards, and then those other holes are lined up. 3 inches from the edge on both corners, both legs are in line with each other, and I took clamps to really pull the table in because the last thing I want is for when I drill this hole, the boards to separate. So the main force, I guess you could say, is held by these 2 bolts that are through just about the center of each plank, and then this one here is really just to help the legs from prevent them from buckling. So let's go ahead and I'll just start these off. We're using a Forstner bit because we're fancy like that, and I'll just start. Oh, a bit cramped in here. Wow. Start these off, and then I'll lift the legs out of the way and continue the holes. Well, I'll leave it to the twist drill. Got her done. I must say, for being, I don't know, 100-year-old wood, this smells awful nice still. For those unfamiliar with old farm properties, we have a couple old barns here, awful lucky to have them. And it seems that every old barn, whenever there was an offcut of wood of any sort, it went up into the haymow or up top. So luckily, this was a long piece, and I was able to cut sections off of it. Secondhand, reclaimed, as they say. So let's flip it over, get it mounted. What I've done is popped the carriage bolts through just on the 2 holes, and put pieces of wood on the undersides so that they don't get pushed through. Ooh, when I put the legs on them. There we go. And the other side, and then I'll bolt them, put washers, put nuts on them, and then try and keel over the whole table. Keel it up, I guess. Upend it. There we go. Well, tighten them down. So here goes nothing. Oh my goodness. Jeez. Stuff. This is stout, that's for sure. Oh, how the heck? I'm going to do this. Oh. Well, yes, there we go. While continuing the work on the planer, here is the explosion that's going to compile into the countershaft. So I have some lovely little tiny shifting hangers. So have the loop on the end here for the shifting rod. Even have the little threaded boss to put a little oil catch cup on. So that's perfect. I think these came off of an old Barnes lathe, and I took the bidirectional shifting situation and put it on the Myers lathe over there. So these are perfect. Bigger pulley, which will be higher speed for retracting the table, and smaller pulley in the drill vise, and then matching diameter pulleys, which are the hardest things to find. Matching diameter pulleys that you can use to shift, drive, and idle. So there's no set screws on this one. There's a little oil hole there. This is the idler, and there's the driver. There's set screw holes ×2 in this one's case. So this is the shaft that came with the planer, and the large and small pulley came with it too, but nothing was set up, and it had these old split pillow block bearing thingamajigs. So normally you'd keep your shaft consistent, but these hangers are 3/4 inch, 0.75, and one end was already turned down to that, funny enough. The other end was not, so I went ahead, threw it on the lathe, and gave it 0.75 because both of these pulleys also happen to be 0.75. So perfect, no need to overcomplicate life, just turn down the shaft, easy peasy. So the body of the shaft is about an inch or just a hair shy, and it matches the big pulley and the little pulley. So this one's ready to go. These two are ready to go. I have collars for the big diameter, collars for the small diameter. The last thing we need to do is bore the small pulley, not bore it through its hole, but make another hole for a set screw. So I've taken this set screw out of the drive and idler set, and I know it's the same as this one. And it just so happens, oopsie, that it is 3/8 16. If we match up that die, bing, tap, sorry. So this is our 3/8 16 Ace vintage tap. And if we go over to the chart, we find under course 5/16, go across, wait, no, I said 3/8. 3/8 16, OD 0.375. The drill size we need 5/16. Perfect, easy peasy. I have fractional drills, no big deal. So we'll do a pilot hole of a smaller diameter. It's cast iron, so no big troubles here. And then up to 5/16 and drill right through. Go ahead and oversize the hole that's here so that the tap can clear it, and I can spin it with the tap wrench on the outside, and then we can tap 5/16 18 into the hub of that small pulley. The small pulley will be for the forward feed and the large one for the reverse. Gone ahead and punched a little point, started with a prick punch and then widened the hole with a center punch. And now we'll fire up and go over to the drill and put our pilot in there. Old Barnes Camelback drill didn't let us down. Got it drilled out to 5/16 and oversized it to about 7/16 so that we could fit the tap in for the tapping threading operation. This is really easy to work with. Very, very nice cast iron. Just Threading super easy. Wow, what a charm. Well, now we've got all the components for the counter shaft, so let's do a rough assembly. First, on this little stepped thing, I will make sure that there's a collar for the idling pulley to rub against, so it doesn't just rub against the tiny little step. Right about there, I'm just going to do some loose positioning for now. Slide the pulley down. This is the fixed, or the driving pulley. And it can be, well, it'll be fastened into place eventually. I've put a little collar so that the wear against the face of the little bearing block on the counter shaft is minimized. I think, anyway. Maybe not. Anyway, I'm putting the collar there just for the sake of spacing. So we have this hanger. Perfect fit like so. And then the planer, I believe the drive or the feed pulley turns on the outside, so the reverse is on the inside, like this, and then feed on the out, plus a collar to go against the other counter shaft hanger, so it's not just rubbing on the little step. So the counter shaft is bolted in place, and I have a loose belt that just happened to be on the back wall, mocked up here to a little pulley, and see how loose it is. So if I walk over and we fire up, things seem to be spinning all right on the idle, and then I can shift over, drive, no problem. So I'll put the little bar and proper shift forks on it, and then we'll be good to run some belts down and see how it goes. So here's the counter shaft, and very luckily I had most of these shifting elements. So we have, right now it's on the fixed driving pulley. The next one is the idling pulley. These are the two shifting forks, and this is just a 3/8 rod that goes through, connects to the ends of the those little hanger extensions. That's how you can be sure that you have a counter shaft versus a mainline hanger, as those little shift fork extendos. So we have the forks themselves, the rod comes along, there's just a little collar which acts as a stop, And then this is the shifting bracket. There's lots of different types of these things. This one needs a wooden handle to go here, and it would go and get fixed to the roof, and when you shift the handle, it pivots at this point and slides the whole fork system forward and backwards. It needs to be running, of course, to do it. The big thing is the shift forks have to be rubbing against the belt that goes inwards. If you go against the other one, it's not going to want to move anywhere near as well. So this one, you're guiding the belt that's going inward. So this should be all right. The weight of this will help prevent those forks from wanting to go into the wheels or anything. And yeah, so that limit is set so that this rod doesn't travel so far that it falls off the end. So that's the only kind of importance of that little collar there. So we have limits, the forks, and we're good to try this out and then belt up. Well, I had to pull a little bit of a stunt here for this belt to fit. And that's a small pulley, and you know, structurally, maybe not the best decision, but this is really nice old dry hardwood. It's got an awful lot more strength than just a couple pieces of sticks and a couple brackets on it. So I don't think that'll be a big deal at all. Besides, that notch above it on the raft or whatever you want to call it is long old time been there. So I might shim up that rafter because it's not touching. But anyway, had to do that. So let's go ahead, pan over, and I'll hit the start button back here. There we go. Now, runs nice and smoothly. Shift it over to the idle position, and because there's no resistance on it, it might not want to slow down, but I can just, oh yeah, I need to oil that pulley. Okay, next order of business, oil the thing. So at this point we're ready to belt up the planer itself. Counter shaft all well and good. I've put some oil on there, and I had 2-inch belt, that's all I had. So and a little bit of leftovers of leather from the original setup, which were way too dry, they're gonna fall right into dust. So I took some 2-inch belt and ripped it on the table saw into 3/4 inch sections. And then because it's all puffy nylon, whatever compounds off the side, I just took a blowtorch and passed it and burnt the little fibers off to try and keep it smooth. Because of how these little retainer things loop entirely around the belt, I'm pretty sure they're going to rub it, and I don't want it to start to disintegrate. So I've gone ahead and cut 2 sections, splitting the 2-inch and removing a spare bit, and then I've measured them to be a bit different because the reverse is a little bit of a bigger pulley on top, and it also has a half twist. And then the drive is direct connect. So which one's which? I think this one's the shorter. So try that first. So I have to thread it through the little shift systems. Make sure they're tight because I see them moving. So I'll thread it through the front, which is the feed, this one's case. It always helps to drop it off the pulley. There's my pins here. To put the pin in place and then roll it on. Rolls into place, and that's all there is to it. So now we have reversing with the twist and feed straight. It's a little bit slack. I might need to take about a 1/2 inch out of that, give it a bit more tension. It's not the best. I've already put a little bit of a belt dressing coating on them. I'm not sure if it'll do anything or not. And everything is free on the machine. So I'm going to say let's try it out. There she goes. Try the feed. That strong ticking sound you're hearing is the joint of the belt. Because of how I pressed the lacing in with the lacing tool, kind of expanded the width of the belt at that point, so it's really ticking hard when it's going through the little guide. And the feed system's pretty cool. It rocks back and forth, and it's a friction kind of clutch, if you will. So if there's ever this thing runs into something or gets to the end of its stroke, it won't destroy anything. It'll just slip the clutch. And then to change direction, you just flip this little catch around. Perfect. What a nice, smooth running machine too. Holy gee. What a treat. Come have a close look at it. Mascot sitting by the stove. So here's the manual raising and lowering of the cross system, and then the power feed only works traversing the head. This is the kind of manual option for changing the direction, and you can see those little round things are the stops that engage it. So I can just hit it manually and it'll return. We have our little end blocks, and this is a screw pin, I guess they call it, or screw post, something like that, to hold the work in place, and a single T-slot in the middle of the thing. Hendey Machine Co. Torrington. What a beauty. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one. I sure did. Awful excited to have this thing running and ponder what projects there are to do with it. Maybe forge some tools, experiment with that type of thing. Plane a cylinder head, something like that. We'll see. Anyway, stay tuned. What I'm sitting on is the base for a road shaper, and that's the next up project in the works. So until then, have a good one.